from a chorus line or many other things. And you are listening to the Jimmy Diele Show on Hamilton Radio.
Welcome, everybody. And Jimmy, go ahead.
Hi, Karen. How are you? Welcome to the show. Great to have you on with us.
Thank you, Jimmy. I'm excited to be here. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm excited about having you on the show. And you are, of course, an author. You're a comedian. Congratulations on your great book. I love the book. It's called Tied Up in Knots. Tell us about putting this great book together.
Well, it was kind of a long journey because for many years, people have been saying, you should write a book about your dad. And I would say, no, I'm not an author. I'm an actor. Things to that effect, which didn't discourage anyone from bugging me about it. But honestly, didn't think I could write a book. I thought, that's what authors do. I'm a comedian. I'm an actor. But I started having some second thoughts as, the years went by and the people who knew my dad firsthand were passing away. Mm-hmm. And I thought, maybe I should do something. So at that point, and this is about 10 years ago, I started collecting interviews. I went back to my dad's hometown of Morgantown, West Virginia.
Wow.
And I put it out on the radio that I was looking for people who knew my dad or had stories about my dad and to come and meet me at this little wine and cheese party I was going to throw. And about 30 people showed up. Now, they were not contemporaries of my dad's. They were the sons and daughters, the nieces and nephews of the people who had known my dad.
Right.
They had the stories and they were dying to tell them to me. And I even got a letter from somebody who his mother had been in a play with my dad and they went to a contest in Ohio. This is in high school because they won their preliminary round and then they were sent to Ohio and they won this. And they got a letter from the head of the drama department in Ohio saying how talented my dad and their mother was. And I got the copy of that letter.
Oh, nice.
And I never would have even known about that if I hadn't gone there. So that's when I realized, okay, I need to do this because this is getting me closer to my dad. I'm going to be finding out more things about my dad that I never even knew by interviewing people. And I'm so lucky to have the opportunity to where my father was famous. I can put the word out and people will actually come and help me.
Absolutely. And your dad was actually nothing like the character Bonnie Fife, right? He was actually a shy guy, right?
He was a very shy man. And his humor was, his own natural humor was more like, kind of like a British, music hall comedian. He had this very deadpan style. And he would act like he was going to tell you something in confidence. Mm-hmm. And then he would lay this line on you that would just blow you away. So it was really like a master of, how magicians, they call that distraction.
Right, exactly.
That's what he was doing with that. And I heard so many stories from other people that said that he would do the same thing at parties too.
Wow. And of course, you are a very funny comedian. And so I guess your dad was an influence on you. Tell us about that.
Well, he didn't really want me to do stand-up comedy. He thought it was hard enough that I was going into acting. And then when I said stand-up comedy, he was like, are you kidding me? Afraid I was going to. Because, when he grew up, the only women, were doing comedy was like Phyllis Diller. Right. I guess he was afraid I was going to come down someday with a long cigarette holder and a wig and go, Dad. What are you doing with those Fruit Loops in my cereal or something? But, I just I had to develop my own style. But he had this little joke that he would do. He'd go, you know what you have to do to become a stand-up comedian, don't you? You take some marbles. You put one in your mouth, you tell a joke. You put another one in your mouth, you tell a joke. When you've lost all your marbles, you're a comedian.
I have to ask you, do you get recognized as Don's daughter? Because you look like him.
Yeah.
Not physically, but people kind of know that I am just because I've been out there for a while trumpeting the show and the book and the comedy and everything like that. So people kind of know. But that's fine. I used to, kind of I had identity crisis, before I had the confidence in my own self, my own persona. Right. I did have that, like, oh gosh, I don't want to be compared to him and stuff like that. Uh-huh. but now I'm fine with it because now I have my own identity.
Yeah.
And I'm not a deputy sheriff.
Yeah. And you know what I found fascinating in your book is that you used to help your dad practice his lines for the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah, that was so cool. But he was doing that. I think he did need the help. He was always working on his lines. You know, he had so many lines on that show. He was carrying the whole show every episode.
Right.
Lines, you know. So when I first started doing that, I would act out the characters like Andy, Barney, there's a big basket of fried chicken and pickles and cornbread. I want you to eat it all up. No, I want everyone to be as plump as me.
I wanted to ask you too about the first time you went on the set of the Andy Griffith Show. I mean, now I saw most of the inside shots, of course, were on the sound stage, right, of Andy's house in the courthouse, right? Tell us about your thoughts on the whole set and you know, the outside of the courthouse and all that type of thing.
Well, it was really astonishing the first time I went on that set, and because you know it looked so real from a distance. But then as you walk in closer, you start to see how fake it is, right? You're like, wow, those aren't even real, you know, like in the drugstore, they had, you know, the bottles in the windows like they do. And I reached inside and went and picked it up and it was empty. You know, it's like real box, not even a real bottle, you know?
Right.
And then you talk to the actors and they don't sound like their characters. They don't act like their characters.
Right.
And it just was a shocker, you know, it's sort of like, this isn't, you know, the Wizard of Oz, you know, it isn't real.
Wow. What was little boy Ron Howard like?
He was serious. He was very nice. And he was serious. And I remember he was already into the tech gadgets, which was kind of like foreshadowing his interest in directing.
Oh, okay.
At that time, you know, the only radios we had were, you know, radios that you could plug into the wall, or that if they were a transistor, they were huge. But he had this little gold transistor radio in his hand. And I was like, wow, I've never seen a radio that small. I was like, oh, amazed. I couldn't stop staring at the radio.
Oh, wow.
So he was very nice. He showed me around. We walked around and he showed me the practical jokes they played on each other all the time. And he was showing me the remnants of the practical jokes, like shoes that were nailed into the floor on the set, you know, backstage.
Uh-huh.
And there was a dartboard that Andy and my dad used to compete. And he said Andy was always playing and he was always winning. So that meant my dad was always losing.
Uh-huh. So did you guys play together and hang out together when you were on the set?
No, because he was working.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was a visitor. But we were, my brother and I, we were both very, very enthralled with the whole thing. We walked around and we watched all the setups and we watched them tearing down and we, you know, we were just fascinated. And we went on there. I remember another time we went on there and they were shooting a camp scene. And this was, I forget the name of the episode, but normally they shot those scenes outdoors.
Right.
But it was raining that week, and so they shot it indoors. So we got to see a very unusual thing where they were shooting an outdoor scene indoors. Usually, you know, the outdoor scenes were shot up a Coldwater Canyon in Beverly Hills. There's a little lake up there.
Oh, wow.
And it's still there. But they had to, when they put a boat in the water, they had to make sure that the bottom of the boat was clean, and they had these strict rules because it was actually part of the aqueduct that was carrying water to people in Beverly Hills.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Doc G, go ahead.
I got a question for Karen. Of course, I love Don Knotts, from Andy Griffith all the way to all those movies. One of my favorite movies was Mr. Limpid?
The Incredible Mr.
On that scene, on that set, there was so many different things, interactions between him, the fish, and stuff. And I think it was probably one of the first animations where people and animations were together.
It was.
Do you remember? Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about that movie, because that really intrigued me?
Well, I went on the set, and it was really the first time that I realized I wanted to be an actress when I went on that set, because Carol Cook, who played his wife in the movie. Yeah. She had this very touching scene where she was putting when Mr. Limpet turns into a fish, he leaves his glasses behind.
Right.
There he is, this poor blind fish swimming around without his glasses on. So she goes to the wharf to give him back his glasses, and it's a very touching scene where she's saying goodbye. And even though she was kind of a bitch to him, very, very touchingly sad when she gives him the glass. But she puts the glasses on the fish, and she's so sad and so sweet. And so after that scene finished, I went and looked inside that box, expecting to see, something. And it was just a bunch of junk in there. Like, she really made me believe that she was putting the glasses on the fish, even though it was just putting it in a box of junk.
Wow.
And I was so impressed by that I realized that, I want to do this too. I think I could do this.
So would you say that movie opened up a lot of doors for animation with the regular? I think it did, didn't it?
That is a really good question, because I interviewed Jim Carrey for my book. Wow. And he's a huge fan of my father's.
Oh, okay.
And I asked him, because I had a question for him, it was funny because it was hard for me to get my questions in, because Jim Carrey would not stop talking. He's going on and on and on about what a fan he is of my father. And finally I said, can I ask you a question, please? We heard a rumor that there was going to be a remake of Limpet starring you, but it never happened. Why did that remake not happen? So then he started talking about the animation in the movie. First of all, he talked about sitting in his aunt's home on the kitchen floor as a child, just being enthralled with the movie. And then he talked about how it inspired him to want to do more animation. And it did. And when he did motion cap with the Christmas movie he did, what was that? I can't remember, but there were a few. But he said it just didn't quite come together for him to do Mr. Limpet with the effects, that he didn't feel they were sophisticated enough to get it the way he wanted to do it.
Right.
So you're right. It did open up a lot of doors. It opened up a lot of interest. And then the sad story is the man who produced that show, it failed. When that movie came out, it failed because the New York reviewers didn't like it. And at that point in time, New York reviewers could make a film sink or swim. And so they didn't like it. And so nobody went to see it. And my dad was in a restaurant one time in New York, and a waiter said to him, Mr. Knotts, I hear you have a lousy movie in town. Somebody actually said that to him.
Oh
wow.
But I gotta say, the flops, it seems like sometimes the flops are actually critically acclaimed. I don't care what the critics say. The people love it. And I know tons of people that still love that movie and everything that goes to Mr. Chicken and everything he did.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, at the time, those are different times, and different people have different, it's different now. If the movie came out now, I'm sure it would be appreciated, even though it would be a little old-fashioned for the effects, but the movie itself would be appreciated.
And don't forget the one movie that a lot of people will forget, him and Tim Conway in the Apple Dumpling Gang. Oh, that was freaking amazing. Remember that? You remember, Jimmy?
Sure.
A Disney movie that was freaking amazing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That was really good.
Well, with that, the partnership with Tim Conway, that came along really just in time, just in the nick of time for my dad, because at that point, well, actually before then, the family films had died out. When, my dad had a 5-picture deal with Universal. He did 5 pictures. He was star, and he was a creator. He had all, but didn't get much money for him, but he had control. And so he did those family films, and they all made money, and they did great. Right at that time was when, guess what came out on the market? The birth control pill. Oh. And that little old pill caused the sexual revolution in the 60s, because up until that time, women would wait, to start dating until their children were grown, that kind of thing, or out of school. Mm-hmm. But now all of a sudden, women had this freedom. So the family films kind of went out of style. And he, fortunately, he did some variety shows and things. But when Tim Conway came along, and Disney rescued the family film with Tim Conway and a number of other stars. So when he came on board with Tim Conway, what happened then was really interesting. My dad became straight man for Tim Conway.
Oh, yeah, I remember that, yeah.
when you think about it, Tim was the funny guy, and my dad was always funny too, but he was playing straight man, which is something I never thought I would see.
Incredible. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah, we had a question from a listener, Tom Payton, who wants to know, what was Don like as a father?
He was a wonderful father. He was just, you can't put a father in a box. He was all different ways, but he treated me like I was a friend.
Really?
I lived with him the time when I was about 11 years old or so, because they got divorced, my parents. I went to live with my mom. My brother moved with my dad. I went to live with my dad, my brother with my mom. So my dad was dating, and I was his confidant. And he told me everything that was happening in his life. He didn't try to protect me or anything. He just told me everything. And it was so wonderful because I felt so valued in that way, and I was learning from him. I was learning a lot about life, about relationships, everything, just from him being so. But then, of course, he had this neurosis. He was a hypochondriac. And at one point, he had a blood clot, which was a scary thing because when a blood clot travels to the heart, it can kill you,
Yes.
So he was ordered to keep his leg up on a slant board, and he has his head down to the floor, and I'd be talking to him down on the floor like this, like I was a psychiatrist, talking to the head on the floor.
Right.
And so he would just be going on and on and on about all these depressing things. And I would see that he had this depression that was continuing to, that was self-exploding. And I would try to look for a place to break into the loop, where he would keep going on this loop of depression, where I would bust into that and break that open. And once in a while I could, but usually I couldn't.
Wow. Also what I found fascinating about your dad is not many people know that he was a ventriloquist when he started out, right? And did
okay.
Well, a lot of people do know about that because of the shows at Mayberry Days and things. They've become experts. In fact, sometimes they're educating me. But
wow.
Yeah, he that's how he started. He started as a ventriloquist as a young boy.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. Tell us about something about your dad that most people don't know.
Well, he was a ladies' man. He, not in the sense of like Frank Sinatra or somebody like that, but he had a lot of women really liked him. He attracted a lot of women. And he was just very low key about that. He wouldn't run around showing off and being a swimmer. But he did one time, I remember a friend of mine, Tim Frisbee, he was smoking a lot of pot. And one time, Tim told me when I interviewed him for the book that my father purchased a lid of pot from Tim Frisbee. So, I put that in my book. But he did that to impress one of his young lady female friends.
Wow.
You got to do what you got to do. I have a question for you about the Andy Griffith Show. Were they as close as they seem to be on camera with their characters' traits and working together a lot? It seems like they were just a close-knit family. Is that what you've seen?
Yes, they were very close, and they stayed close all their lives. They stayed in touch by phone, and then I remember when my father was, I think when he turned 80, for his birthday, Andy sent him 3 ukuleles that were like state-of-the-art ukuleles. Something about that era they grew up in, ukuleles had special meaning. I don't know why, but people at that age, the ukulele was a big deal. So he sent him 3 ukuleles.
And I remember one time in Matlock when Andy Griffith was doing that show that he did a cameo. I think Don Knotts did a cameo on there.
Actually, that was a running rule.
Okay.
My dad appeared on Matlock 8 times.
Oh,
wow.
I only saw it once or twice. So
yeah, I wouldn't expect you to know that. Well, actually, in that point in time, Andy really helped my dad because my dad had macular degeneration. And he had turned down a lot of work, not realizing that he didn't need to turn down the work because he didn't think that he would ever be able to work again because he couldn't see to read the lines and stuff. But then he figured out a way to learn his lines, of course. But by that time, he had turned down work. And you know how this town is. Once you turn down work, that's it. He's done. That's it. He's gone. Always an excuse, whatever excuse. Get rid of you or something. But so Andy got my dad on Matlock. He had to really go to bat for him because the producer at the time, Dean Hargrove, he didn't want my dad on the show, he said, "This is not a comedy. This is this is a serious show. It's a mystery show and detectives." And he wouldn't hear it. He just kept going in there and fighting for him. And finally,
Oh, so nice.
they gave in, but they still didn't want to pay him the salary they should have paid him. Andy went and fought for him again. And this is, this is a lot of people don't understand about Andy. Andy gets a bad rap because people, people hear that he was moody and he was difficult and things, and he was moody. I know that because I remember that about him. But he was also a terrific person.
Oh,
He's always in Dad's corner, and he supported the show and he supported the people on the show. And it was a little bit moody. So what?
Wow.
yeah, we all got something. Go ahead, Jimmy.
So
Yeah.
your dad only did 5 seasons of the Andy Griffith Show, right? Tell us about your memories of that when that ended for him, and then he pursued his other projects at that point in time.
Well, Andy always said he was only going to do the show for 5 seasons. So they signed a 5-year contract, and he was dead set on that, saying he was not going to go any longer than 5 years. And so they signed that 5-year contract. And then as it got toward the end of the 5-year period, my dad started looking for work because he was always very practical about getting work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when he got the offer from Universal Studios to do this 5-picture deal. Well, in the meantime, Andy was contacted by by CBS and offered a tremendous deal to continue with the series, extend the series. And I don't think he had any other offers at the time, so he accepted and was hoping that Dad would go along. But Dad had already agreed to this other offer. It was a verbal agreement, but it was a promise. So, and I think, quite frankly, my dad was ready to move on because Barney Fife was a terrifically difficult role emotionally, physically, and it was just, they worked, up to midnight a lot of times, and he was always busy all weekend learning his lines for the next week's episode.
Wow.
So, and I think that, after 5 years, it's pretty hard for writers to come up with any fresh material, if the situations have kind of all been done, especially back then, because they made many more shows than they do now, in sitcom land.
Right.
And don't forget, Andy Griffith, I think, went in to be Mayberry RFD with Ken Berry. So it was kind of like the same, thing, like a carry-on thing. But I wanted to ask you about, well, actually, my friend Victor wanted to ask you, is there any relation to the Knott's Berry Farm?
No.
I bet you get that question a lot, right?
I do, and I'll tell you, grammar alert, that Knott's is spelled KNOTT''S, and we're not possessive, we're plural.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. All right. What about Three's Company, John Ritter? Your dad had to have a hoot doing that. I mean, after Norman Fell, his role was gone, they put him in there. And it was just a great show.
And the producer, Bernie, he was so nervous. What are we gonna do? How are we gonna replace Norman? He's one of a kind. Wait a minute, I got a brainstorm. Let's get a Don Knotts type. And the casting director said, Don Knotts type? Why don't you just get Don Knotts? Like, Don Knotts is still alive?
Oh, yes, really? They said that?
Than you.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my God.
This is another thing that people, and I wondered about this for a long time. And then one of the writers on the show, they fired many writers on that show. Gene Parrott was one of the writer-producers, and he was the head writer for Bob Hope before that. Mm-hmm. He said, well, the thing is that people, when they're a star, the thinking is this negative thinking, like, why would they want to do our show? Oh, this guy's a star now. We've already got these stars. He'll be down on the pecking order kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that's why that happens a lot, where they say, let's get a so-and-so type, because they don't think that person will want to do it. And it's negative thinking. But my dad really didn't want to be the main character anymore. He, at that point, he was older, and he didn't want the stress of that. And they already had established everything. So it was perfect for him. He had the part where he could come on, make a big, make a big splash with his funny outfits, get a good laugh. And then he would just be this adorable little character. And what he really enjoyed was John Ritter, Joyce DeWitt, Suzanne Summers, Priscilla Barnes, who came after that, and Jenny Lee Harrison. He enjoyed all of those people. And it was just a lot of fun for him.
Wow. That's awesome. Also, you were a librarian at one point in time, weren't you?
That's right. Yes, and that was because it took me a long time to get my foothold in what I was doing. And So my father encouraged me to, I had all these part-time jobs that were just terrible.
Mhm.
I'm sure all actors can relate to this, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
We've all had those jobs you don't want to talk about. But so I went to school. Anybody who is a librarian has a master's degree.
Mhm.
And so I went back to school and got a master's degree, and I started working as a librarian, and I really enjoyed it. In fact, I use that in my comedy. I have a little act about being a librarian in my stand-up comedy.
Right. Now, when you started acting, your dad gave you some advice on acting, didn't he?
Yes. What did he say? You have to really bug people. You have to go after them and bug them. So there was this casting director named Bobby Hoffman, and he was doing all the big sitcoms at the time. I got him on the phone and I started saying, "This is Karen Knotts and I want to work." And I started doing this. The guy just hung up on me. So I didn't do well with that advice.
Give us a little bit of your comedy, so when people go out to see you, they can see what you're about when you go out. With keeping it clean, of course.
Well, my act is well, it's just, I suppose you can tell I'm Don Knotts' daughter. We look a lot alike. No? What about now? That's my life, folks. I go around making faces, hoping someone will recognize me.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's just my opener.
That is so cool.
And you do a one-woman show, right?
Yes, and the one-woman show is currently I've been booking again now that the pandemic is sort of over. Yeah, we're over. And so I've been back. All my shows were canceled for 2 years. I didn't do any shows. Now I'm back and I've been touring around. I did a couple of shows in West Virginia. I did a show in Michigan. And then in October, I have 4 or 5 more shows coming up. And I also have a new show with a partner. His name is Rick Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
So it's called Knotts So Fast.
Oh.
Knotts So Fast. And we're having our debut show on October 29th in Dalhart, Texas. So please go to my website if you're interested, KarenKnotts.com, and look at the show page, and you'll see the dates of my shows.
Is that the Rick Roberts as a DJ?
No, he's not a DJ. He's a comedian, and he does a lot of corporate shows too. So he's a stand-up comedian and a great guy. And he does a Barney Fife impression, so we'll do some of that on the show too.
Oh wow! And where'd you say your shows are going to be? All Southwest and Texas and stuff.
I tour. I do a lot of shows in the Midwest, mainly because those are the shows. Those are the people who are interested in live theater shows mostly.
Mm-hmm.
So I go out there, and they're great audiences. I love doing it. And it's a lot of fun. So anyway, I'm really excited about this new show with Rick too.
A little bit about the book too. Go ahead.
And the book is doing great. The book is doing, and now all these fears I had about, I don't know how to write a book and everything. I guess I know how to write a book, but it was, it took a while, but I just started to write down every story that I could think of, not knowing what I would use or what I wouldn't. And so then, and the trick to it is just finding the right places for the stories.
Right.
If anybody out there is interested in writing a book, just write it anyway, and you'll find a place. You'll find a place for your stories.
Well, before you go, Karen, one other question, and I'll let Jimmy ask one more question. If there's any way you can do a sweeper for Jimmy's show and the station, just basically say who you are and you're listening to the Jimmy Deal Show on Hamilton Radio, and anytime you're ready.
Hi, this is Karen Knotts. I'm with the Jimmy Deal Show, and I'm so excited to be on his show. And I'm on Hamilton Radio. I hope you can tune in.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I want to just ask you before I let you go, what was your favorite episode of the Andy Griffith Show? Do you have one?
Well, I had 3, and my father, I think we had the same 3 favorites.
Okay.
Barney's first car,
Mm-hmm.
Barney and the choir, and the pickle story.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Karen. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Karen.
Such an honor to have you. Such an honor to meet you. I really appreciate you being here.
I enjoyed it too. Thank you so much.
You're
Thanks,
an amazing
Karen.
person. We wish you well on your tour and with your book as well.
Yeah, come out to New York and New Jersey. We want to see you here.
Yes, I want to.
We love comedy out here. We need
Absolutely.
it.
We need it. Absolutely.
Talk to you later. Bye, Karen.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.
All right, Jimmy. Wow, she was awesome, man.
Yeah, was she great?
A wonderful, wonderful guest.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Prince Fleet Easton's here. You know Prince.
Hey,
and then
Prince, how are you?
Victor Ybarra, Tom Payton, Dave Hodge, old friend of ours.
Oh, Dave Hodge, what's up?
Friend of yours, John
and Tracy too is out there, I'm sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we got also of course you mentioned Tom Payton. Thank you for the questions, Tom. And Cindy out in Lake Ronkonkoma is out there. I think Flora's in Brooklyn, and my mom's out here in Canarsie. So many people listen to us every single week. I appreciate it so much. And coming up on Monday, Doc, we have it's a Memorial Day special actually, and we have Hollywood producer Steve Binder's going to be here with his. He's going to talk about the 68 Elvis comeback special, and he was the producer of that show. So we're going to find out all the behind-the-scenes stuff that went on with Elvis and the Colonel and all that type of thing. So that should be fun. Also, we got Sal Valentinetti from America's Got Talent on the way. So many great guests coming up. We'll keep you informed about all those great. We have Darren Dowler of Paul Revere and the Raiders. He's going to be here. So many great people. I have Elvis's girlfriend, Diane Goodman. She was with him when he was at Nassau Coliseum in Long Island.
Oh, nice.
And so she's going to be here for our Elvis Week special in August. And so many more two great people on the way. We'll keep you all informed all about that as we keep going along here on Hamilton Radio.
George Galfo from the Mystics on
July 9th, right?
June 9th.
Oh, June 9th. June 9th.
June 9th.
Great.
It's a Thursday. We're going to be on at 6:00, guys, Jimmy and I. So join us, and then of course more people we got coming in. Prince, like I said before, Victor, anybody that you guys want to send us, just let us know. We'll be glad to interview them. I think we give a fair interview, Jimmy. I think we really cover the spectrum, but we also are a little bit more unique with questions. We're not like, what is this? What is that? What,
exactly.
And they love that because they give that flexibility.
Well, you know what I like. You know what what I get from all these celebrities that we have on is that they the majority of them walk away saying, that interview was so much fun. And that's what I love hearing.
Yeah, even 15 minutes, half an hour, we would love to interview anybody as long as they want us to interview them. That's fine.
Exactly.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. I appreciate it, and thank you, Doc G.
Thank you, Jimmy. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.